Good afternoon to you. It is now 3:06. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. Coming up this hour, one of the few reporters who's been on this mental acuity issue with Joe Biden for a long time, James Rosen, is here at 3:30. We'll talk to him about that. President Trump's attorney, Will Scharf, joins us at 4:30 today. At 5 o'clock, we talked to Congressman Scott Perry about the dangers of Joe Biden continuing to have the nuclear codes. And Ed Morrissey is here from Hot Air at 5:30. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. The palace intrigue continues with the White House. Who will be the Democrat nominee? Have you noticed that Democrats are not spending any time hand-wringing about the fact that they're about to screw their own voters over? They're not the party of democracy. They don't care at all. It's the party of power. They're dispensing with Joe. They're blowing past the entire primary. Who cares who they voted for? We'll pick the nominee. That's what's happening right now. Today, a report out of the New York Times attributed to a, quote, ally. It's weird. It's in some ways you think, okay, maybe they do have good sourcing here. And then in other ways you think this kind of seems like a thin piece. President Biden has told a key ally, whatever that means, that he knows he may not be able to salvage his candidacy if he cannot convince the public in the coming days that he's up for the job after a disastrous debate performance last week. The president, I love how they pretend that it's just the debate performance. You know, the New York Times, even in its lead sentence, they are suggesting it was just the debate performance that is really the problem. No, it's the entire brain. It's the fact that you all have been lying about the current state of the president for years. Now you're willing to tell the truth because you're looking for an exit ramp to help maintain power for your party. It was just after that disastrous debate performance. The president, who this ally emphasized, is still deeply in the fight for re-election, understands that his next few appearances heading into the holiday weekend must go well, particularly an interview scheduled for Friday with George Stephanopoulos of ABC News, and campaign stops in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. Quote, he knows if he has two more events like that, we're in a different place, end quote, by the end of the weekend, said the ally. Referring to Mr. Biden's halting and unfocused performance in the debate, the person who talked to the president in the past 24 hours spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss a sensitive situation. Andrew Bates, a White House spokesman, said the report was, quote, absolutely false, end quote, and that the White House had not been given enough time to respond. It's absolutely false, said Andrew Bates. Okay. So this is interesting. So did Biden say to an ally, a key ally, somebody who the New York Times thinks they're single sourcing this. All they have it is from the, quote, ally. They're not telling us who the ally is. It could have been Barack Obama. We have no idea who the ally is. But this person has extended to the New York Times. Yes, Biden told me that he is contemplating whether or not he'll continue in this race at all. This is, it's interesting. There's a power struggle going on here. This may also be a planted story. It may be bogus. Biden may not have said something to this effect. Biden and his family, in particular Jill, may be holding on for dear life at this moment. And some establishment Democrat goes along to the New York Times and says, hey, run this story. Biden is contemplating dropping out, even though he maybe never said anything to that effect. We don't know, is the point. Also, we don't know who spoke to CNN and whether or not they're the same person, because CNN, quote, confirmed the New York Times story today. And guess what their sourcing is? An ally.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Breaking news, CNN has learned President Biden has privately acknowledged a series of critical tests are ahead in the next stretch of days. Those tests essential to determining whether he can stay in the race for the White House. CNN White House correspondent MJ Lee joining us now. MJ, what more are you learning?
Erica, what I am learning, and this is according to an ally of the president's who spoke with the president directly yesterday, is that
what are the chances it's the same person? So now they're waging a media campaign? So did CNN divine out the exact person that the New York Times spoke to, and then they just reached out to them and said, hey, would you share this with us too? Is this ally running to all of the various news outlets and talking to them and saying, yeah, Biden's seriously thinking about getting out of this race? What is this exactly? Is it the same person? One would assume so. If both news outlets describe them as a, quote, ally, chances are that quote, ally asked those news outlets to describe him or her that way. Just, again, we're just trying to do a little bit of navigating through what the hell we're being told here, and if this reflects in any sense reality.
The president has privately acknowledged that the next stretch of days are going to be so critical to the question of whether he can save his re-election campaign. The president, made clear to this ally in this conversation yesterday that he understands what circumstances would prompt him to basically accept it's just not working. This person who spoke to the president telling me that he sees the moment, he is clear-eyed, and they said that the president is very clear on the series of potential events that could come in the coming days that would prompt him again to accept that what he's trying to do to turn the narrative, turn his campaign around, isn't working. This person said, quote, the polls are plummeting, the fundraising is drying up, and the interviews are going badly. He's not oblivious. This is, of course, the person paraphrasing the conversation that they had with the president yesterday.
Now, let's pretend that Biden was of sound mind for a moment, and that he didn't have a cruel and unusual family trying to force him to stay in office in order to keep advancing their own power and wealth. Let's pretend, just for a moment. If you're looking at these numbers, and you are headed for certain defeat, and the American people are that much against you, and every swing state plus a couple of extra states they didn't know were swing states are now in Trump's category, at what point do you say, maybe I should get out of this thing? Like, if I want my party to keep barreling ahead with its agenda, maybe I should get out of this thing, right? Because so under those circumstances, someone might consider stepping away, letting someone else be the nominee. But here, Biden wants to prove to the people that he's not completely mentally shot over the course of the next few days. Now, you heard me say yesterday, who knows what's going to happen with this George Stephanopoulos thing? You can make some predictions here. You can say, oh, it's just going to be a softball interview because he's a Clinton guy. He's a Clinton communications guy, Clinton press secretary. He's just going to give a softball interview. It's an edited interview. They're filming it on Friday. They're going to air it on Sunday. It's over a holiday weekend. It might not be seen by that many people. People are more focused on their families and their friends. Those are all perfectly legitimate conclusions based on all behavior you've seen in the past from the left, right? Past performance is indicative of future results. So we know what this looks like, by and large. Here's the rub. Here's the thing that stands out. The establishment is on the move to take out Biden because he is an impediment to their long-lasting power. They realize now that even with the rigging they've been attempting, that includes the lawfare against Trump, it's not enough. It's not enough. And the voters, by wide margins, are heading in Trump's direction to the point that it's, as Trump says, too big to rig. So this panic is a product of that. And so Stephanopoulos, as a loyal little establishment guy, has an opportunity this week to knife Biden, to take him out of this race, to embarrass him. In fact, the edits that they might include in this interview, as they edit it, might be the most unflattering edits that they've ever given to a Democrat. There is a very real possibility that come Sunday, it will be a jaw-dropping expose on the way the current president of the United States shouldn't be anywhere near the nuclear codes. It could be. It could be. Especially if he's doing the bidding here of the establishment Democrats who are trying to get rid of him. So this is kind of fast. This is a very fascinating coin toss. Little George is going to have to carry out the bidding of his elders here in the Democrat Party. We'll see. But today you had Karine Jean Pierre answering some questions. Doing her thing, just her normal lying, Tell me lies, tell me sweet little lies. Yeah. Tell me lies. So she was asked today, hey, what's the deal? So you told us that the doctor has only seen Biden. He only examined Biden. The doctor, Kevin O'Connor, only examined Biden in February. And that was the last time? And it hasn't been since? What is going on exactly? And now you're telling us today that he was jet-lagged for 2 weeks after he got back from Europe, and he had a cold, and that all explains why he was a stuttering fool, why he was getting troop deaths wrong. He was completely just a disaster last Thursday night. That explains all that. You're telling me the doctor hasn't seen him during that entire period? Take first and foremost, this is a question today put to Karine. Karine, about the doctor and the fact that the White House isn't making him available to the press. Take a listen.
So the White House has said no to releasing the full results of that annual, said no to making Dr. O'Connor available for questions from us, no to releasing any other information that would shed some more light on the president's health. I guess I'm just wondering if now is not the time for full transparency. When is?
So I would say, MJ, to your question, that what we have released over the past 3 years, every year since he's been in office, has been transparent, and it has been comprehensive. It has been one of the most transparent. We have been one of the most transparent administration when it comes to medical records.
Not true. I mean, look, President Trump had Ronnie Jackson, his White House doctor, now a congressman, go up to the lectern in the press briefing room and answer all of the questions the press threw at him about Trump's health. And remember, at the time, the press was concerned, trolling that, oh, Trump's actually on the verge of death, right? He's mentally impaired, correct? His health is awful, right? He's morbidly obese, correct? Remember all of this? And Ronnie Jackson, took the questions, and he was no, he's actually doing pretty well. Unusually capable of maintaining long days. A lot of people can't keep his pace. That was Ronnie Jackson's assessment. The White House doctor goes out, answers the questions. No such exchange for the Joe Biden White House. And here you have Karine lying again.
That is what we've been able to do, and I would add that it is not the norm to bring the doctor to the podium. That is not the norm. And
that Trump, he's always breaking norms. I can't believe he did that.
We have owned up. This president directly has owned up to what happened at the debate last Thursday.
Okay. Yeah, sure he did. As you make up a new excuse with each passing sunrise. Oh, it was a jet lag. It was a cold. He was just. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to say next, but it's not going to be the truth. Whatever it is, it'll just be another lie. Here is now a follow-up question. Wait a second. If he had a cold, think about this. If you were the president, I don't care how old you are. If you were the president of the United States right now, and you came down with a cold, you woke up in the morning, you had some sniffles, sore throat, wouldn't the fact that you have a 24/7 doctor right down the hallway, wouldn't you see them? Wouldn't like, hey, oh man, I'm not feeling that good. You tell your aide, I'm not feeling that good. Don't worry, I'll get the doctor. They run down the hall, they get the doctor, they bring him in. Doctor takes a look at you and goes, take some Dayquil. You'll be all right. Don't worry. You can do everything. Right? There's a doctor whose job is dedicated to your health, constantly by your side. Here's the question today to the White House. If he had a cold, you're telling us there was no examination at all of this guy before the debate or any other point?
Thanks, Craig. I just wanted to ask, how is the president's health today? Does he still have his cold, or is he feeling better? And then to clarify on the medical exam, because you said he hasn't had one since his last physical. He was on the way to the debate. The doctor was with him. He had a cold. He's 81. Does he not get checked out by the doctor? I'm just curious.
I can tell you he did not get checked out by the doctor.
What?
It's a cold.
What is the doctor there for? What does the doctor in the White House do? Okay, so here's the follow-up question. What is the point of having a White House doctor if they're not going to examine the president when he has a cold?
That it affects everybody differently. We have all had colds. And so, no, he was not checked by the doctor. What was your other question?
Yeah, sometimes when you have a cold, you forget how many troops died on your watch. That happens, as you know. Everyone knows that. It's 3:20 now. All right, so 2 weeks after Biden got back from Europe, he had jet lag still somehow. He's the only person ever in the history of jet lag to still have it 2 weeks later. And he picked up a cold, and the entire White House medical team didn't have the time to stop by and check in with him on that subject. Let's go to the phones. Marie is calling in from Bethesda, line 2. Marie, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, good afternoon, Vince. How are you?
Good.
So let's think about this logically for a minute about Karine Jean Pierre up there trying to just obfuscate all these questions from the media, because think about it. She cannot give them one crack of information, not one nibble of information, because if she does, they get their foot in the door for more questions, more information. Mm-hmm. This White House is on total lockdown of any kind of information getting out about this. Now, they know it's already out, but now they're on damage control big time. As far as whoever his physician is, if it's the White House physician or even a personal physician, they are on call 24/7. They know what's going on with him. If he needs so much as a Tylenol or an Advil, they're on it, okay? Because they have to keep the medication going and monitor his medication and his health, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So this isn't going away anytime soon. To keep badgering, the press secretary, they're not going to say anything. They're just not. They're going to do everything they can to keep him in the White House for as long as they can.
Sure.
Because I'll tell you, the 25th Amendment's not going to be that easy. It's a sticky, messy process, okay? The Democrat leaders know this. They're all working overtime behind the scenes, okay, trying to figure out how we're going to do this if we can, because technically Biden would have to step away. He'd say, well, I've made the decision. I'm not going to run.
Yeah.
And we are less than 130 days away from Election Day. So this is a very tenuous situation. And, a lot of people are making fun and jokes. It's a very serious situation. Mm-hmm. Number one, we're talking about somebody's health, no matter what we think of his antics, his policies, whatever he's been doing. It's somebody's health, okay? But number two, the health of our country is at stake.
Big time.
And they're playing games.
I care more about that side, too. Yeah, no, you're totally right. And they're lying to us. Marie, thank you very much for the call. Let's see here. I'll have to get to more calls coming up. I know your calls are coming in, and I appreciate them. We do have James Rosen coming up moments from now. James was in the room today. And was it James? Have we confirmed it was him? I think it was. It sounded like his voice. We can ask him coming up. Somebody was asking about the president's schedule and whether or not he would show up at the lectern at all. And I heard a reporter from the back of the room go, yeah, if he's awake. And then everyone got angry at that guy. I think it was James Rosen. I'll ask him straight ahead on the Vince Colliday Show. Hey, good afternoon to you. 3:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. Coming up, President Trump's attorney will be with us at 4:30. That's Will Scharf. At 5 o'clock, we talked to Congressman Scott Perry about whether or not Joe Biden should even continue to have the nuclear codes. And at 5:30, Ed Morrissey from Hot Air is here. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Hey, before we bring in our next guest, I want to raise a very important point because I think we've caught the White House here in a really clear lie today. Sean in Manassas, line 1. Sean, good afternoon. Go ahead, sir. What's your question?
Hi, how you doing, Chris? Happy 4th? Can you hear me all right?
I hear you just fine. Go ahead, Sean.
I hear you just fine. Okay. Just something occurred to me while you were talking about cringe and all that. Something really stinks here.
Yeah.
At his age, if he had a cold and he didn't see the doctor, why wasn't he checked for COVID?
Sean, thank you for that. I'm gonna answer your question right now because I want to play some audio for you. What Sean just asked was, why wasn't Biden checked for COVID? The answer to that was he was checked for COVID. He saw a doctor. Here is Karine Jean Pierre just within the last hour saying he didn't see a doctor with his cold. Take a listen to this.
Thanks, Craig. I just wanted to ask, how is the president's health today? Does he still have his cold or is he feeling better? And then to clarify on the medical exam, because you said he hasn't had one since his last physical, he was on the way to the debate. The doctor was with him. He had a cold. He's 81. Does he not get checked out by the doctor? I'm just curious.
I can
how
tell you
works.
he did not get checked out by the doctor. It's a cold, guys. It's a cold. And I know that it affects everybody differently.
So she lied there. According to CBS, during the debate, they say 45 minutes into the debate, sources familiar with Mr. Biden's debate preparations said he has had a cold for the past few days. A top official said the president was examined by a doctor at Camp David who confirmed the cold. The president tested negative for COVID, they said. So either they lied last Thursday, they're lying today, or some combination of both. For more on all of this, I want to bring in our next guest, James Rosen. He's the chief White House correspondent for Newsmax and the author of the great book, Scalia. James, great to have you with us today, sir.
Great to be back with you, Vince.
This is okay. So this is yet another inconsistency from this White House. Karine Jean Pierre just said, no, Biden didn't meet with a doctor at all with this cold. Yet the White House was telling reporters last week he met with a doctor and he tested negative for COVID. Can you square that for us?
I can't, but I would suggest to you that it's probably on the lower end of the problems that the White House has right now. This is a moment where President Biden is literally, as even CNN has acknowledged, in crisis mode, in survival mode. We've got this delegation of Democratic governors who are going to be descending on the White House for a closed-door meeting with the president at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, with still more Democratic governors joining in remotely. And one gets the sense that it is a critical moment for Mr. Biden and his struggle to preserve his place atop the Democratic ticket. Jean Pierre, in the White House press briefing that you referenced, which ended a short time ago, stated flatly that the president is not dropping out of the race and he has given zero thought to resigning his office. But nonetheless, we've seen the dam break in the form of two Democratic members of Congress yesterday calling on Mr. Biden to withdraw from the race. And that's on top of many leading organs of the mainstream media, such as the New York Times, the New Yorker, and so on. This is a real serious moment for this president. And it's not going to hinge on whether Jean Pierre told the truth about his doctor's visit.
Well, that's true, but it's just added to the pile of lies. In fact, you have been attacked for even asking questions about this. It does seem like all of a sudden the water is just fine. All these reporters out there asking questions about Biden's cognition. But you asked this question back in January of 2022 to President Biden himself. The White House did not like this moment. Let me play it for you.
Thank you very much for this honor. James Rosen with Newsmax. I'd like to raise a delicate subject, but with utmost respect for your life accomplishments and the high office you hold. A poll released this morning by Politico Morning Consult found 49% of registered voters disagreeing with the statement, Joe Biden is mentally fit. Not even a majority of Democrats who responded strongly affirmed that statement.
Well, I'll let you all make the judgment whether they're correct.
Well, so the question I have for you, sir, if you'd let me finish, is why do you suppose such large segments of the American electorate have come to harbor such profound concerns about your cognitive fitness? Thank you.
I have no idea.
I have no idea, he answered. James Rosen, what happened after you asked that question?
Well, first, the answer itself. I always knew the president was not going to spend a whole lot of time on that terrain. But the answer itself, I have no idea, validated the question in many people's eyes, because when someone tells you they have no idea, they are speaking, in a sense, to a mind that is empty. But it was considered at the time, 2.5 years ago, when I raised that question, in the wake of that polling that had appeared in Politico, nobody's idea of a right-wing outlet, the response from my White House colleagues and the White House itself was that this was rude on my part, fringy. And I was blackballed by the White House in all briefing settings, in the press briefing room, on the background calls, on background briefings that take place in person, all the ways in which a reporter can participate and ask questions. I was blackballed by Jen Psaki and then Karine Jean Pierre for 8 months. Now, here we are 2.5 years later. I'm proud to be recognized for being ahead of the curve, but the underlying nature of the subject matter here, Vince, prevents me from feeling any gratification in this. And here we are 2.5 years down the road, and I dare say that this issue has now emerged as the defining issue of the Biden presidency.
Did the White House Correspondents Association or any other journalistic organization attempt to get you back on the white list, to get you in a position where you could ask these questions, or were you left alone during that fight?
I raised the issue a number of times with the White House Correspondents Association, an organization in which I have been a member in good standing for most of the past 25 years. And I was told by various members of the organization, whether it's Caitlin Collins or Kelly O'Donnell, currently I think the president of the White House Correspondents Association, and people I've known a long time and respect, that they would raise it, but I never heard back. I tried to address it with Jean Pierre herself, and we made only limited headway. Today, there came a moment where Jean Pierre in the White House press briefing was asked by a reporter about published reports that have suggested that during President Biden's preparations for the debate up at Camp David, nap times in the afternoon were built into his schedule. Jean Pierre flatly refused to address this, and the reason she cited for refusing to address it was because it was based on anonymous sources. Now, she had just spent considerable time in the same briefing addressing directly a New York Times story that was based on anonymous sources that had reported that Mr. Biden has acknowledged to allies, or at least one ally, that he knows he may have to withdraw from this race. That the White House called absolutely false reporting. That was based on anonymous sources.
Right.
So once that issue about nap time was raised, somebody else asked, well, couldn't he just come to the press briefing room and address us directly? And I interjected to say, if he's awake. And both Kelly O'Donnell in the front row and Karine Jean Pierre denounced that interjection as inappropriate. But it seems to me, having refused to address the nap time question, Jean Pierre herself left open the possibility that the president was, in fact, at the afternoon hour in which the briefing was being held, napping. And so that's why I interjected as I did.
I was curious. I was asking before you came on. I was like, I thought that was James Rosen's voice. I suspected it was you. Let me, if I might, James, I'd like people to hear this audio. This is today, Kelly O'Donnell speaking to Karine Jean Pierre. You'll hear James Rosen speak up as well.
Is there any discussion that if the president were to suspend his campaign, that he would also resign? Are there any discussions about the vice president assuming his duties?
Absolutely not. Go ahead, Kelly.
Does the president have a duty to review data, like polling information that's coming in, donor information, the fears and concerns or anxieties expressed by Democrats? Does he have a duty to review what's happening now?
When you say a duty, can you say more about the duty piece?
He's absolutely running.
Yeah. Well, he's saying that, and I'm sharing with you his view.
And we would invite the president to come here and tell us that directly.
Noted, Kelly.
But
if he's awake.
That's inappropriate.
As you heard from your colleague, the president of the WHA, that's inappropriate. Thank you, Kelly.
You know, James, when I listened to that, I was like, that's a little rich that they're moralizing to you. The White House has lied non-stop about all of this. They're spinning off of their axis right now, and they're telling you that you're being inappropriate by raising a very legitimate issue.
I wasn't a White House correspondent during the Trump term, but my understanding, and from having watched a lot of those press briefings, was that reporters didn't demonstrate strict decorum in shouting out questions at President Trump or his aides, and that nobody rebuked them for being inappropriate. It seems to me reporters shout out questions. Objecting to it would be akin to showing up at Yankee Stadium and objecting to the presence of bats and balls.
Yeah, I agree with you, and yet here we are. All right, James, where do you think this goes from here, and to the extent that this can be ascertained through your reporting? Right now it definitely seems that the Democrat Party is at war with itself, that there are forces within it that are desperately trying to keep Biden in office, and it seems a growing coalition who are trying to get him out.
So this struggle for who shall represent the party as its standard bearer in November faces a couple of different elements that will force some kind of answer. One is a ticking clock element, which is to say the state of Ohio has a state law that mandates that the nominee of the party shall be known and placed on the ballot in Ohio by a date certain, which is before the Democratic convention.
Right.
That date is something like 35 days away. So if there were to be a switcheroo of any kind, in order for the nominee to appear on the ballot in the all-important state of Ohio, it would have to be made in the next 30-some-odd days. The other element is that the sword of Damocles sits over President Biden's head with every public event he attends and engages. All it's going to take is one more freeze-up or one more awkward moment that extends painfully for this drumbeat to resume in earnest. It's not at all clear what the outcome is going to be of this evening's meeting between the president behind closed doors with Democratic governors. But one gets the sense that it is make or break.
Definitely. And the White House is not revealing the details. Let me rephrase that. Is the White House revealing any of the details of what those conversations are about as he meets with these governors, as he sat today with the vice president for lunch?
They present it as this meeting with the governors as an opportunity for the president to reunite the team and to align behind him so that he can continue the extraordinary work he's done over the past 3.5 years. That's their line. As for today's lunch between President Biden and Vice President Harris, at 12:15 p.m. Eastern Time in the president's private dining room. The substance, the atmospherics of that session remain unknown to reporters at this time. One hopes at least that historians will get a sense of it.
One hopes. You're an historian yourself. Hopefully you can get a hold of it. James Rosen, thank you very much. Good to talk to you today, sir.
Same, Vince. Thank you.
That's James Rosen from Newsmax, one of the only reporters who's been on this story for a long time. There's been a lot of Johnny-come-latelys, though. Hey, I don't think the president's well. Yeah, ask James about it. He's been on this forever. That's an amazing thing. All right, let's see here. I've got a couple things coming in. One, let me get Ivan out of Florida here, line 3. Ivan, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince, how you doing, man?
I'm good, sir.
Hey, Vince, I think it's in honor of Rush Limbaugh. Mm-hmm. I think it's time for us to implement Operation Chaos 2. You remember when the Republicans registered as Democrats in the primary, to throw a little panic into the Democrats?
Yes.
I think what we ought to do is we ought to have some rallies with signs saying "Save democracy. We want Joe. We want Joe." Just have us down with crowds. The media won't know what to do with it, and it'll confuse the media, and it'll confuse Joe as well. Mm-hmm. Joe will say, "They love me. They love me." But anyway, I think we ought to have Operation Chaos, Vince.
I like this a lot. There's what Ivan's talking about is way back when, it was 2008. Rush Limbaugh had Operation Chaos. He was advocating that Republicans go and vote for Hillary Clinton over Barack Obama in the primary just to cause a lot more trouble in that fight that was ongoing at the time. And the media got really angry at Rush Limbaugh for getting involved. How dare you, Operation Chaos? But everything was legal. Everything was legit. And Rush was having a great time with it. Ivan, I've been thinking about this. I've been talking to some friends, and I was like, we should launch a political action committee called Leave Biden Alone. Leave Biden alone. And we just come to his defense. We say, this is really unfair. This is so nasty that you're picking on Joe Biden. How dare you? This man's a public servant. He's been in office for forever. And between you and I, Ivan, he's also the very best candidate to have on the ballot coming in November. But that aside, just leave him alone. Stop picking on this guy. I think it's a hoot. And by the way, as we're saying this, Ivan, leave Biden alone, have you noticed that the left is now using all of the right-wing talking points against Joe Biden? Hey, what's Hunter doing in the Oval Office? Why is Hunter involved in all of these meetings? Don't you think that Joe's a little too old to have this job? Suddenly, Ivan, the left is stealing all the stuff you and I have been saying for years.
That's right. Hey, Vince, by the way, I think it's a disgrace that I actually disagree that the Dems are in panic. I don't buy it. I don't buy the fact that they prepped him for a week and they didn't know that Biden was Biden was actually Biden, and and it's like usually the media is in lockstep after the debate, telling us how the Democrats won, but this time they were all in lockstep condemning Biden. So I believe this is all orchestrated, and I don't buy for a minute that they're in panic. They're always a step ahead of us.
Yeah, but this is not like an Olympic gymnast routine or something. They're not hitting every mark exactly as they want to. This is a messy process as they try and get rid of Biden. So are there people within that party who knew and saw the writing on the wall? We got to get rid of this guy a while ago. I'm certain that's right. I think the decision to schedule this debate as early as it was in June, it's very unprecedented. I think the concept behind that was Biden is likely to faceplant on that stage. That'll provide the public predicate we need to get rid of him. I think you're right insofar as that there are people who were considering all of that. How it gets executed, I don't think this is a very neatly choreographed dance. I think this is a big mess. And right now there are all sorts of forces within that party fighting amongst themselves. And to the extent that we can keep that fight going and cause some trouble for them, that'd be great too. I agree with you on that, Ivan. Thank you very much, man. Okay, coming up on the program, my favorite headline of the day from CNN: Biden's mental fitness could have been better covered leading up to the debate. Oh, you don't say. They talked to White House reporters. Why didn't you cover Biden's failing brain? Their excuses coming up, and we'll be joined by Will Scharf, the President Trump's attorney, in the next hour. Stay with us.